Maybe it's due to his brain or his cynicism or both, but unfortunately, Spike Lee's filmography hasn't really aged that much. Even his first chunk of films have been celebrated as timeless classics for nearly 4 decades at this point. Spike belongs firmly up there with some of cinema's top auteurs for his dedication to the overall messaging present in his filmography, as well as being the pinnacle modern black voice of his medium. His films always represent certain topics he wishes to talk about, whether it be the first chunk of his career mainly trying to give as much representation to different perspectives of black American culture, or the second part where he attempts to avidly critique modern American culture. Now when it comes to Spike's filmmaking and directing, there really is a lot to look at. It's the iconic casting, his use of music, his storytelling outside of the narrative, and especially the tried and true double dolly. I'm going to talk about his use of space. Space! Hey now, space is one of the 7 universal aspects of creating an image. It's a very important rubric when thinking of how your story is to be shot. A majority of Spike's stories take place within the streets of Brooklyn, a simple enough neighborhood. Not as dense as Manhattan, not as indescribably horrific as Bronx, but a fairly residential type of county with lots of diversity and energy. Many of his scenes take place in these small rooms and solid streets. So how do you grant a sense of space for your characters, a sense of space that offers room for expression, impression, and blocking? Let's start out with Do the Right Thing. I'm not going to spend too much time because, let's face it, you already kind of know why this is amazing. This is really flat use of empty space. The Dutch angle helps elaborate and escalate the image. The different backgrounds help illustrate the thematic differences of all these characters. The intro alone is remarkable for both having a ton of space and no space at all. And the film isn't really obsessed with strange angles, so this world feels more grounded, consistent, and we feel the characters a lot more because of it. Crooklyn does this shit, which physically alters the space to be more compact and regular. One could say this brilliantly portrays the physical tension of being in a new place with new stressors, but one could also say this looks like I'm watching a movie scene on YouTube by someone who doesn't know about conflicting frame sizes uploaded in 2010. In BlacKkKlansman, there are some interesting examples, like in one scene, the space being traded in for a void filled with black faces. Very flat, but very emotional. BlacKkKlansman makes decent use of spaces like basements. One group all in uniform in a cracked den, while the pro-black group are silently listening to one of their elders in a home. Gathered close yet more respectful. Jungle Fever is pretty good. Samuel L. Jackson in the crack den, you see the size of that. The perceptual turned sensuous nature of the office building. And whatever the fuck this is. Inside Man does not necessarily have grand space, but it does make use of sensory details of each space, like using very close shots and talking about prison cells, as well as how the crowd is structured throughout the bank.
Other guys just feed you lines, but I take you to Mickey D's.
Mo Better Blues is decently box standard, except for having characters interact in between time with similar spacing. That's pretty unique. And then there's those really emotional, really wide crane shots all throughout the club, which seems like it was meant for practice for something like, okay. So there are some Spike Lee joints that prioritize cinematography over story. There are some that prioritize story over cinematography. And then there's Malcolm X. Malcolm X has got to be the pinnacle of what Spike can do in an open space. Throughout the movie, we see the main character function in small apartments, barbershops, and train cars. This clearly affects the main character as someone who is seriously frustrated with his life, yet used to taking abuse from anywhere. When he goes to prison, the space feels flattened, not only because this portion of the film was shot on very long lenses, but the framing is much more geometrical and flat than before. Many mockings of the frame and vertical lines which represent prison bars, a sliver of spotlight in a pitch black prison. His initiation to Islam is almost theatrical with flat staging and another dramatic spotlight, very long shots walking in the cage with minimal movement in the frame, their heads framed by a table. Then later on, when he starts making speeches and creating his reputation, we are in much larger rooms, or with large, solid, respectful crowds. We see large crane shots. There is such a vast amount of examples in this film, but let's keep things simple. Don't worry, I'll fanboy in a second, but right now let's look at the scene where Malcolm is confronted by Betty about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Although Cuzzo isn't looking too honorable right now. We start with just these two in front of a flat wall. Then once tensions escalate, We are given space for the rising tension, medium deep rooms with a small amount of cuts, just enough of a reminder that this is a domestic dispute back and forth. When you look for a closer space, we look the topic of discussion right in the eyes. After we go here, we are closed off, further showing us the private domestic theme of the scene. The rest of the scene is this. This is where we talk about it. The background has barely enough depth to not look flat, with the characters and profile straight to each other, slightly tilted. The tension is perfectly set, perfectly understood on a visual level, and perfectly representative of what is going on in the moment. But then when he goes to the Middle East, everything is so different and contextualized so differently. Each room serves a religious purpose. The rooms are either as big as they need to be or Leviathan-sized. Malcolm wanders through crowded agoras, spiritual mounts, sleeping piles, the Mecca, and dunes with artificially darkened skies, recalling the sizable landmasses of some of the films of Akira Kurosawa. All this imagery culminates with a final image, the larger-than-life historical figure, humbling himself in a large mosque, with many lights symbolizing the size and complexity of his beliefs, a churchly, large red carpet, and Malcolm bowing slightly offset to the audience.